let's get our full-blown acceleration here. Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, we're gonna be going over a 2021 Nissan Versa. Now, the cool thing about this car is it has a manual transmission, but first and foremost, a huge shout out and thank you to Tim Daly Nissan here in Murray for giving me some time with this Versa. Check out the inventory in the link below. Let's get straight into the video. Under the hood of the Versa, we have a naturally aspirated 1.6-liter four-cylinder that goes through a 5-speed manual transmission. Fuel economy is 27 around town, then 35 on the highway, with power outputs being 122 horsepower and then 114 pound-feet of torque. Now let's go over the front end of the Versa. So first and foremost, you guys can see that we've got these halogen bulbs here at the front end. This is kind of more like a baseline package for the Versa. I love how they have the little venting right down there for accenting on the car. I think it looks pretty cool. And then you've got Nissan's signature chrome smiley face there on the front end, and then you got the Nissan logo as well right there in the center. And then I love the black accenting all around it. And again, the styling isn't crazy here on the Versa. It's just pretty much practical, but I mean, it still looks like a, you know, good modern car. So coming around the side here, we've got 195mm tires wrapped around 15-inch wheels on the front and over in the rear. I mean, it's absolutely crazy the fact that this has 15-inch wheels. I know a lot of performance cars that have brakes that are bigger than the wheels on this car, but again, it goes to the fuel economy conscious, like practical, kind of reasonable setup for the tires, because I mean, that's what this car is all about. And then you see you've got the mirrors all blacked out, and then the door handles as well to kind of go with the overall theme of the car, having, you know, some blacked out elements to contrast the rest of everything on it. Now, coming into the trunk area of the Versa, you can see that you actually get Versa floor mats that come with this, and there's some extra storage space underneath where the spare tire sits. Look how tiny and cute that spare tire is. Again, doesn't need a whole lot because it's a small car, but it's pretty interesting. I mean, I've had bikes with tires bigger than that. But anyways, other than that, again, decent amount of storage space. It's a smaller size car, so what else would you expect? Wrap things up here in the rear, so you've got all of your regular badges, and then another cool little feature is this actually comes with parking sensors, which I wasn't expecting. Obviously, backup cameras are standard now here in the US, but I mean, it's got parking sensors, is pretty cool. And then you can see you've got like the little rear diffuser here, and if you guys are wondering, the exhaust tip is just chilling out that side underneath the car so it doesn't break up any of the lines. But yeah, I think it's a pretty good looking car. I feel like the taillights also, from a stylistic perspective, I feel like they look pretty neat as well. So here's the door panel on the back of the Versa, and again, this is kind of like an entry-level package, so you're not going to see like leather-wrapped anything or anything like that, but they did some cool trim right there to break things up, which again is another nice little touch. But the seats, this is actually my favorite part. So you've got full cloth seats, obviously, but I love the design here in the center of the seat. I think it looks really cool, kind of like a retro design. But let's actually pop into the Versa. So I do have to duck a little bit to get in. If you guys are wondering, I'm 5'11", and I actually touched the top. I think this is like, other than like the back of like muscle cars and all that, this is like the first time I actually touched the top. And then you guys can see my legroom's actually pretty good. It's weird, it doesn't have the best headroom, but it's got good legroom. And then you got some USBs right there, but that's the back of the Versa. Now here's a door panel at the front of the Versa. You guys can see it's the same as the rear, and you still got the cool little trim right there that surrounds all of the window controls and the mirror adjustments, all that kind of stuff. And then here are the seats at the front, so they're just as cool as the seats there in the rear. They've got that cool retro design there in the center portion, and then they're manually adjustable. And then you guys can see down below, there's the pedal layout, and then you've got the little gas cap release, and then the release for the hood. And then just up here, you've got the buttons for the parking sensors, your lane departure assistance, and then your stability control, and then also your collision assistance. Yes, this does come with collision assistance, which is pretty cool. And then other than that, there's one more look before we pop in. And here's the steering wheel in the Versa. So you guys can see, first and foremost, you've got the cruise control here on this side, and then on the other side you've got the controls for the radio and your volume controls, phone controls, all that kind of stuff. Again, pretty basic design overall. And speaking of the safety tech, obviously you guys saw that you have the parking sensors, the lane departure assistance, the collision assistance, all that kind of stuff, which I just think is really cool. This comes with a bunch of safety tech, and once you guys hear the price, then you're gonna be like, wow, that's actually really reasonable for having all the safety tech this has. Anyways, got your little light stock there, that's also the turn signal stock. And then the other side, you got your windshield wiper stock, and that's the steering wheel for the Versa. Now here in the center, you've got the RPMs on the left side, and then on the right side, you've got the speed. And then you can see right there in that little center screen, you can see stuff like your average miles per gallon, your range, all that kind of stuff. Nothing too crazy, pretty basic setup. And then obviously, since this is a manual, you guys can see the little brake light is on. If you don't have the brake light, you're probably gonna be rolling into something. Now here's the center infotainment system. First off, we're gonna pop it into reverse. You guys can see you've got the backup camera right there with the trajectory lines. Resolution on it's pretty good. And then as for the rest of the infotainment system, you've got these little shortcut buttons on the side, and then you guys can see you can press stuff. Response time on this is actually really solid. I'm actually pleasantly surprised with that. Other than that, it's pretty basic. It comes with like Bluetooth, all the regular functions that you'd kind of expect, radio, all that kind of stuff. So nothing too crazy, just gets the job done. Just down below, we've got our climate controls. It does have a single zone climate, and then down here you can see you've got a 12 volt and a little auxiliary with a USB as well, and then just some extra storage here. Push button start here, which, I mean, I've reviewed quite a few vehicles that are way more expensive than this that don't have push button start. And then here is the transmission selector. So I really like this shifter, actually. Obviously, again, they use pretty basic materials for the shifter itself, but the shape is pretty nice. It's really easy to get it into gears. It just has like this nice notchy feel to it, and it'd be really hard to miss a gear with this car. And reverse is super smooth getting into that as well. So just overall, I think it's a really good manual transmission selector, and we'll kind of talk more about that on the driving portion. But I mean, just from the gear shifting perspective, it's really easy and solid. Now we've got the little brake right here. Again, you're obviously gonna have to use it since this is a manual. And then we've got the center console armrest thing, which is kind of weird. You've got this that looks like a little tongue sticking out. Like, imagine like an anteater, okay? And then that's the little like head, like the narrow like nose thing to the tongue. Anyways, you guys can see that you've got a center console there, nothing too crazy, just has an interesting thing because obviously for the armrest, but just looks funny. And then you guys can see they actually did stitching here across the dash, which I think is pretty neat. And then opening up the glove box, again, decent amount of storage space with that. And then I like the circular vents on either side with the Versa. So up top here, we've got our light controls and then a lighter colored headliner, and then the mirror does have the little mirror dimmer thing. Nothing too crazy though. Again, pretty basic here for the top portion of the car. So now that we're done going over the interior on this Versa, let's quickly talk about the pricing. So in terms of pricing, this Versa with the manual transmission and all the options it has, stickers for about $16,000, which I feel like is a really good value considering all the safety tech that this has. I mean, being a brand new car with a full warranty and being under $20,000 with the safety tech, I don't know. I feel like that's a good value. That all being said though, let's take this Versa out and see how it drives. Well, let's talk about visibility before we set off here in the Nissan Versa manual. You guys can see visibility over the hood's really good because it just slopes right down in such a small car. Then there's your visibility through both of the mirrors. And then here's all throughout the rear, which is actually really good for being a smaller size car. They just have a bunch of really large windows with this car. And so yeah, from a visibility standpoint, super practical. That all being said, clutch in, first gear, let's go. We are initially setting off here in the Versa manual, and like I said, it's really easy to shift it into gears and everything. Like, this is a really easy manual transmission to drive, and so if you're learning to drive manual, this would be a really good car. I mean, obviously the best vehicle to learn how to drive manual is a manual transmission diesel truck, because you literally can just throw it into first gear, drop the clutch, and it has so much torque that it'll just move. But aside from that, this is actually pretty solid. The one thing I will say is the throttle is a little bit on the touchier side, so sometimes with the clutch engagement and everything, it might be a little bit awkward and take a second to get used to. And with the ratios, they're really close together. And so just understand that initially, like once you're getting up and going, you're gonna be shifting quite a bit, which I don't mind. I mean, when I'm driving a manual transmission car, that's what I want to do. That's why I would be getting a manual transmission car, so I can shift. In terms of the rev matching, this throttle isn't, or this car isn't the most blippable, if that makes sense. And so rev match downshifting, it's not the best, just being honest with that, but it's not horrible by any means. And starting at a second gear here, doing a turn, it does it really well. So you can easily start out of second gear with this car as well. I know that with cars like this that don't have tons of torque, people a lot of times won't start out of second, but obviously if you're like slightly rolling just a little bit, it's better to start at a second than going back into first, because obviously going back into first a lot of times will put quite a bit of pressure on the manual transmission, depending on the car, right? But so far, the car drives really smooth as well. For the segment, I'd rate it at about average, a little bit above average. We'll see how it kind of handles these little train tracks right here. Yeah, it does a really good job with dampening, and in terms of the noise, again, I'd rate that at about average. So far, I mean, for being a $16,000 car, you guys got to remember that. And I think that, okay, don't quote me on this, but I think that Nissan dealerships usually discount these a little bit, or Nissan usually has programs as well. So it might even be less than $16,000. Yeah, it's just not, it doesn't like to blip. And I mean, I'm a little bit spoiled. Last week I just drove a manual transmission Porsche, and so that's like the best throttle in terms of being blippable. But you know, it's not bad by any means. But yeah, 16 grand. This is a lot of car for 16 grand. I know it has a manual transmission, but it's solid. And getting like minor acceleration here, I mean, it's pretty good. So if this was a CVT, it would actually feel a lot slower with the power, but because you're shifting the gears yourself, every single time like you drive a manual car, it feels a little bit quicker than the automatic. Obviously it's not from a numbers perspective, the automatics can shift quicker and all that, but because you're like so engaged in the driving, it kind of makes it feel quicker even though it's not. And this car definitely plays along with that. And let's see how the handling is coming around to this little portion. I mean, again, it's a smaller size car, but yeah, pretty good. There's not a whole lot of body roll. Yeah, guys, I'm trying. I am trying my best. This thing does not, that was a little bit better. It doesn't want to blip. It just doesn't want to do it. It's like, yeah, no, I don't really feel like it, but let's get our full-blown acceleration here. So obviously, you guys heard the power figures. It's not crazy fast, but I mean, it gets up and goes. And with this manual transmission, it's really, again, it's really engaging. It makes this car a lot more fun to drive. And that'll actually get me summing things up. So obviously, most people that buy the Versa are gonna get this with the CVT automatic. That's gonna get a little bit better fuel economy, and obviously it's gonna be a little bit friendlier to people because a lot of people don't know how to drive manual transmission anymore. But if you're willing to learn to drive manual transmission and you're okay with getting a little bit lower fuel economy because it's not really that much of a difference, then I would definitely go for this car, because obviously in the long run, this is going to be a lot more reliable from a maintenancing standpoint. Manual transmissions, they're just always cheaper to maintain than automatics, especially compared to CVTs. So you save yourself some money in maintenance costs. You'll have a little bit more fun with driving the car itself. And I mean, it's just such a good bang for the buck. So that's how I would do the Versas with the manual. But if you get the CVT, I understand that too. That is going to sum things up with our video on this 2021 Nissan Versa with the manual transmission. And again, a huge shout out and thank you to the Tim Daly Nissan here in Murray for giving me some time with this Versa. Check out their inventory in the link below. I'll see all of you in that next video.